Hello, welcome to Tea and Talk. I'm your host, Olivia Boughton. Today I am joined once again by Stan Blicharz. Stan, thank you so much for joining me again here on Tea and Talk.
My pleasure.
You are my first repeat guest, and when you were on last time, I said, we have to have you back because we didn't get to talk about a very important aspect of your teaching career. So we'll get to that in a moment, but we'll start with some tea.
Great.
So today I've brewed up some Kenyan black tea.
Wow.
So it's grown and harvested in Kenya, and it's a more full-bodied, kind of rich flavored black tea. And as is often the case with black teas, I do have sugar and some creamer here. And we have a nice little complimentary set that I picked up in another thrift shop. This is my thing to do now, is look for tea items. The teapot is new. That wasn't from a thrift shop, but I think is a nice complement to this set of cups and creamer and sugar bowl, because
Yes,
it did not come with a teapot as such. So let me pour you a little bit of this.
Thank you.
Would you like any?
I would like a little bit of sugar.
Okay.
Just half a teaspoon.
I have these little
Oh, that's
guys.
plenty.
Okay. Little sugar cube.
All right, thank you so much.
You are very welcome. I'll pour a little for myself. Try not to get it all over. So, it's a pretty colored tea, kind of a...
Well, I was looking for it to be a little darker, but it isn't.
I know, right? It has sort of almost a reddish hue.
Very good.
What do you think?
I like it.
Not too bad,
Yes,
huh?
very nice.
This is really a non-tea drinker I have sitting with me here. So,
yes.
you know, try to find something that's palatable for people who like coffee.
This is terrific.
Good. So the thing that we never talked about, Stan, was your career as a driver's ed instructor. Mm-hmm. So when you were on last time, we talked about your career as a teacher and an administrator, school administrator. But we ran out of time, and I think that it's a very interesting aspect of teaching, actually, to teach other people, young people in particular, how to drive a car, because that is something that you use your whole life, right?
Absolutely.
Once you learn that skill, you're continuing, hopefully, to drive safely for the rest of your life.
Correct.
So it's an important and interesting thing, I think. So tell me, how did you get into that? How did you start teaching driver's ed?
Well, I already had a long career in education up until 1999. Mm-hmm. And in the summer, I was painting houses. I had a house painting business. But I was going to be 51, and my wife said, I think it would behoove you to find something else to do in the summer. And so I had been talking with a colleague who was not a driver ed instructor at the time, but he was an umpire.
Okay.
And he was telling me that he was interested in looking into driver education. He was not a full-time teacher, but he was a para-educator.
Okay.
At Mill River High School. And so that conversation stuck with me. And in the fall, September of 1999, I decided to call the Department of Education and to inquire about how I would go about getting a degree in driver education. I had already had a master's in education and in administration, but and in guidance, but you needed more coursework to be a driver ed teacher.
I see.
And so I was told that I called at the right time.
Oh.
Yes, because the first course of the next segment of driver education was beginning in the end of October.
So it was meant to be.
It was meant to be. And so I enrolled got the information that I needed, and the course was drug and alcohol, and it was going to be held in Barrie. So I would have to travel
It's a haul.
from Rutland,
Yeah.
and it was going to be on weekends, Saturday and Sunday, 8-hour days in the classroom
Wow.
to get to 40 hours that was needed to pass the course. So I met some other driver ed instructors who were going for recertification,
Okay.
taking the course with me. And then there were 3 or 4 teachers who were getting into the driver ed program like I was. Some were coaches, some were teachers. And that started the career. The next year, they were offering courses during the summer, and one of them was called Zone Control. And that had to do with understanding the areas in your car and around your car. So if I were talking to a student about, okay, be careful about watching your front, I would say be careful about watching your left front zone or your right front zone or your side zones or rear zones, for instance. If we were coming to a stoplight, I would be saying, okay, your front zone is closing because we have to stop, all right? And if we could drive along, then of course we had an open zone.
I see.
So we had to be careful about that. Now, if we were going through an intersection, we had to be aware of our, for example, our right front zone if a car was ready to pull out on us. So that was zone control. And then, of course, we needed to be aware of braking and using your indicators, you know, your blinkers, using your rear view mirror, because many people do not use the rear view mirror when they are stopping. They're looking forward when they're braking, but one other thing that they need to do is to look to their rear to make sure that cars behind them
Right.
are going to be braking with you. So they notice that your red lights are on and so on.
Right.
So zone control was good. And then there were 2 other courses called in-car driving techniques.
Oh,
And-
okay.
Yes, and so that was kind of baffling for me. What are you talking about, in-car? Well, it had to do with the instructor's demeanor and how you handled the students
I
who were
see.
behind the wheel.
Right, you
How-
can't start screaming at them.
Oh, of course. That was a definite no-no.
Yeah.
No.
Or
and-
grabbing onto
oh,
the.
Well, very. I did that very infrequently to grab the wheel. The key was with in-car techniques was you as the instructor had to be anticipating way in advance. All right, you just couldn't say, okay, brake, or
Right, you have to prep.
stop, or
Right.
whatever. You have to be thinking, okay, looking out your front zone, you can see that there's an automobile approaching. Be careful what its intentions are going to be. And I would often caution the student to watch the inside front tire of that automobile to see if it was going to be crossing over the center line or if it was going to be staying in its lane.
Right.
So that was something to be looking way out in front. You know, you're looking
Right.
at 100 yards possibly.
Right.
Now, the other thing that happens too is that with a closed zone, you might have a car in front of you and you would only have, you know, a 3 or 4 second area of space. So we have to be cautionary about automobiles directly in front of us as well. Well, anyway, with the in-car techniques, we had to be calm, all right, for one thing, and explaining, okay, why they needed to do a certain behavior while they were driving along.
Right. Okay.
And also to indicate with lots of praise if they were, if they were successful in doing that. Very often there were students who would use the brake very hard. And so you were always going forward or bouncing off the seat.
Right.
And so we had to instruct them about, okay, slow with the brake. If you're looking way out of head in your zone, you can see that there's going to be a situation already showing up. Be ready to brake slowly, from the beginning. Same with coming to a stoplight. Slowing down. And one of the 15 safe driving habits that we were instructing had to do with, if you had to come to a stoplight, you could see it in the distance, slowing down so you could get a green. And so while you were coming to that stoplight, you could visualize, okay, what is happening in the intersection, what cars are turning, which ones are not, and then already be slowing down enough so that if something unexpected happened,
Right.
you could stop.
You could stop.
And so that was a major habit that I tried to teach, and my wife still does it too, is to slow down, try to get a green at a stoplight. And I had one student from Rutland High School who did that successfully 33 times.
Wow.
Yes, yes.
Was that I'm sure that was a record.
That was the record.
Yeah.
That was the record. And so I would explain that to other students, not only from Rutland, but from West Rutland, because I taught there for 14 years. And then I was 23 years at Burn Academy. And so we also were trying to beat that record there.
Yeah.
And
But it still holds.
it still holds. So now it wasn't in one drive time that we
Sure.
did it 34 times. It was over a period of 3 or 4, drives
Right.
that she was able to get to that level. But it certainly was something that was impressed upon her and that she did automatically from then on.
Right.
So
Right.
that was great. And there were 15, like I said, safe driving habits. Number 1, check your car when you're going to get into it. Make sure the tires are not flat. Looking to adjust your rear view mirror. Putting on your seatbelt, of course. All of these things.
Yes.
And so in many cases, these young students were not instructed that by their parents, so they didn't think they needed their seatbelt, but that was one thing that was very important.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with the in-car, we also had students in the back seat.
Oh, that's true.
So
right.
I just didn't have one student. I had at least 2 in the back seat who were also supposed to be paying attention, all right, to what was happening in the front.
I like how you said supposed to be paying attention.
Right. So one of the things that I devised was an activity sheet that I had clipboards back there, and they were to indicate curves and hills and stoplights, stop signs, anything that might have crossed in front of us inadvertently, like a deer or an animal, because I would often have students, if a squirrel came out, readily wanting to put on the brake, which was a dangerous habit, especially if we had automobiles behind us.
Right.
And so we would just say, no, the squirrel is going to evade our car. Just keep driving. If you are concerned, take your foot off the gas a little bit and just kind of, for a second or two, slow down.
Right.
So that was in car, and the students would then have to turn these sheets in, and I could tell based on the differences or the same, knowing who was paying attention.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the students would just, be lackadaisical
Right.
and not do the work. So they would not get credit. So they didn't have to do this worksheet every time because they usually had 8 or 9 drives to fulfill 6 hours of driving. But they had to do it 5 or 6 depending on the size of the class I had. If I had 30 students, monitoring 6 worksheets from 30 kids is a lot. So I would limit it to 5. But I could then compare what student was really watching curves and hills and other things, and
Right.
which one wasn't.
Right. Right.
And so we had to explain, okay, what's a curve? If you lose sight of the road when you're driving along because of the curve, then you know it's a curve.
Right.
If you lose
Right.
sight of the road when you're climbing a hill, same thing.
It's a hill.
So that was fun. It was interesting. A lot of the students didn't like doing it. They just wanted to just sit back and relax.
Yeah. You said that was something that you kind of came up with.
Yeah, it was advised in our coursework that might be something to keep students active,
Right. Yeah.
in the car,
Yeah.
and something that would keep them focused. So that was also a key. And so the students who were driving then, after 20 minutes, because you would get a 40-minute stint, well, it would be 20 minutes twice.
Okay.
So they would get in the back seat and do the same. And so they would understand, okay, that's what I'm supposed to be doing when I'm driving.
When you're driving. Right.
So that worked out. So in-car was very interesting. The key for me was, because I had already been a guidance instructor and a teacher, the praise for good work came naturally.
Sure.
So I would embellish that, if a student reacted quickly and proficiently and so forth, that was good work. And on the other hand, if there was something that they didn't do, then I would have to stay calm
Right.
and share, okay, this is what you need to do. Now, there were several instances when a student just wasn't focused. And for instance, in Rutland City on Court Street,
Yeah.
all right, if you're passing the Rutland Library and you're going south and you're
Okay.
headed toward the American Legion, there is not a stop sign on the street, that's Center Street,
Right.
coming up the hill.
Right.
And so you would have to make sure you braked and then checked left and right before you crossed the intersection. And so there were a couple of times when I could sense that the student was not going to stop and was not going to understand that coming up the hill and going down the hill, there was no stop sign.
Right.
And so there were several instances when I had to use my brake to make sure we didn't move,
Right.
because I could see that they were going to continue forward. Now, there was one instance in North Clarendon on North Shrewsbury Road when you come to the stoplight and go toward North Clarendon where the elementary school is,
Okay.
crossing Route 4, or it would be Route 7.
Route
There
7,
are
yep.
4 lanes there.
Yes.
And a couple of times, students did not stop. They, for some reason, did not see the stop light and went through 4 lanes of traffic with a red light.
Whew.
And so in that instance, I would have the student pull over and we would change drivers. Just to have them understand, okay, you made a real substantial error there. You could have
Right.
killed us all.
Right.
And you need to get in the back seat and think about that.
Right.
Because-
Did you have a lot of anxiety as a
Well, at
teacher?
that-
I mean, in that moment, I'm sure you
yes.
did, but
Not really. I try to show confidence in my students, and
Yes.
so that you can do this. It's
Right.
not that difficult.
Right.
Now, what I did expect from the students was that they had at least 2 or 3 hours, maybe even 4 hours, depending on their level of competence, to have some driving with their parents before they came to me. Now, how is that going to happen? Of course, I would have a parent meeting before the program even started. So when those parents came to the meeting, I would indicate to them, listen, you need to go to a back road, dirt road, whatever,
Yeah.
just so your student knows where the brake is, where the blinkers are, where the gas pedal,
right,
all
very
of that.
basic,
Yes.
basic things.
How to adjust their rear view mirror and all of
Yep.
those things.
Yep.
How to turn the steering wheel,
Yep.
Now, most of the parents complied with that. But if they had a student that was not confident, then they backed away and left it up to me. So
Which
here's the issue with that. You only get 6 hours of driving with a student. And so if
not a lot of time.
No, it is not. And if I have to spend an hour of that 6 hours just driving around a parking lot,
yeah, not a good use of time.
No, we waste a lot of time.
Right,
And
right.
we waste a lot of practice that they should have on the main road.
Right. Well, and I'm sure, like you were saying, you tried to project confidence and, help your students to feel like it's possible. And I'm sure that when a student came not really even knowing some basic things, it was harder to help them feel like, yeah, they can do this.
Correct.
Because they're already coming in with sort of a lower level of
Right.
confidence because they haven't done any of it yet.
Exactly.
I know.
And of course, the expectation for not only the student, but the parents and friends was that you were going to pass.
Oh, of course.
You were,
the pressure,
the 6
right?
hours was,
Yeah.
that's all you're going to get.
Yeah, yeah, and then if you failed and you didn't get your license, right? The sort of the
Well,
stigma around
of course,
that.
it is true.
Yeah.
Now, you could pass the academic part, but the driving part was crucial.
Right, of course.
And so we would often send a letter home after the 6 hours was over. Okay, parent, your child needs more practice. Oftentimes I would do more than 6 hours with a student, just because, but then the school would have concern for that because they're paying me by the hour.
Right.
Okay, to just, they know how many hours are going to be involved in the
Right.
and so forth. But
Right.
I was fortunate that West Rutland and Boughton allowed me to, put some extra time in with the students
Yeah.
to make sure that they were capable of passing the
Yeah.
state test.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, some did not at the first try. For instance, doing a parallel park,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Or not coming to a full stop at a stop sign.
Yeah.
They still have their parents' habit of what I call the Hollywood stop, and that was a key
roll.
word. Yeah, break and roll and go through.
The Hollywood stop. I
Yes.
haven't heard that, but I'm going to remember that now.
And they kept that whenever I would meet some of my students and say, okay, any speeding ticket? No. Any crashes? No. Any Hollywood stops? They were getting back into their parents' habit of, break and roll and go through.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of intersections in Rutland where I see adults daily basis doing that practice. Okay, so we had the in-car techniques, and then there were a couple of more courses, just driver education. One what had to do with philosophy of driving, and ADCEA, which is the National Driver and Traffic Education. So they put out certain safe habits that we all should be thinking about when we're driving. Now, for instance, we just had a big change happen in Rutland City with the road diet.
Right. Yep. Lane
And
changes.
lane change, and the fact is now that there is not really a passing lane going through the city
Right.
because of the bike path on each side.
Right.
Now, I think it's a good idea because the speed limit should only be 30 and 35 anyway going through the city, and very often it was not. It was higher than that.
Right.
And I'm hoping that people understand, okay, this is also a safety measure for you.
Right.
We have a lot of side streets.
Yes.
Pedestrians, well, that was another issue. We've had several pedestrians be run over
Yes.
because of excessive speed or the fact that they didn't make eye contact with the drivers and
Right.
get out in front the path of an oncoming vehicle.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will limit the number of accidents crashes. I don't call them accidents. anymore. Crashes, if you are going to hit a person or if you're going to hit another car, that's an expensive proposition.
Right, right. So you were mentioning this organization, and you have something in front of you. I'd love for you to talk about that.
Well,
before
every
we-
year, Vermont is one of the highly rated states for driver education.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it's in the forefront across the country.
Yay, Vermont.
Yay, Vermont! we have a great reputation. Yes, we
That's
do.
great. That's
And
great to know.
our people in the Driver Education Association are very dedicated, conscientious people.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to keep that going. So what happens is when we have our association meetings twice a year, we look at individuals that have really risen in the ranks in terms of how their teaching is going and so forth. What kind of success are they having with their parents and administrations. So they're encouraged to apply, I guess is the word, for this national award.
Okay.
And so for several years, I had distinguished myself as, doing a good job in my schools. And so the powers that be were encouraging me, well, go for this award. And it's usually takes place at a national driver ed conference.
Okay.
Now, they're held all across the country. Sometimes they're in Hawaii.
Wow.
They could be in Kansas. It could be in North Carolina. It could be out on the West Coast. And it could be in Vermont. Well, I held off for 4 or 5 years because I had this commitment with Boughton Academy and then West Rutland High School that I
Right.
would teach their summer programs.
Okay.
And I couldn't afford to take 4 or 5 days off
To go.
to go
Yeah.
out wherever this conference was.
Yeah.
In fact, one year when I was president of our association, the conference was in Hawaii.
Oh,
It was, I had to refuse
right.
because I was already
Because your
committed.
students came
That's
first.
right. And so finally, it was going to be held in Vermont, Burlington. And so for 2 years, they were saying, Stan, this is it. You're not going to be able to avoid this.
Yeah.
No excuses, blah, blah, blah. And so we had to do a PowerPoint presentation
Okay.
to the whole assembly.
Wow.
So there were probably 250 people from across the country there.
Wow.
And I did make a presentation. It had to do with how does driver ed compare with baseball.
Wow, that's
Yeah, with
great.
the game of baseball.
That's great.
So it was kind of a, what is he talking about? And so I did that. And so this is what I was presented. For the whole East Coast, there were
great.
4 or 5 of us that were cited for that year, 2019, as Teachers of the Year.
Teacher Excellence Award.
Yes.
That's
So
amazing.
it was
Congratulations.
fabulous. Thank you so much. And I was very proud of that. I felt like my work was worthwhile, and that people were understanding the significance and the importance of driver education.
Absolutely.
And so I was interviewed by WCAX TV and WPTZ. It was fun.
You were famous.
Love
You were
Jeepers, yeah,
famous.
for a little while.
Oh, well, Stan, it's been great to have you here talking about driver's ed. We've run out of time for today. Already. And I just want to say on behalf of all your former students and all of us in our community, thank you for
You're so
your
welcome.
work teaching so many young people how to drive safely on our roads.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Oh,
Yes.
well, thank you again for being here with me today. And thanks to all of you for watching. I'll see you next time.